Okay, I think we are live. I'm just going to double check and make sure that we're live and everything's up and running. Apologize for starting a little late. We had technical issues. We still do have technical issues with Alex, but we tested the setup, everything yesterday, everything was fine. We got on there today, and for some reason, beyond my knowledge, we couldn't get the audio to work correctly where we could hear each other. But now I'm good with Mike Smith, who is going to explain his 4-3-3 setup, and hopefully Alex Mason is going to get back on, and hopefully if he does, his audio is going to work, and then we can have the planned discussion of 4-2-3-1 versus the 4-3-3. If not, at least we're in touch with Mike, and we can make it a discussion on the 4-3-3, and then we can reschedule and have the 4-3-3 versus the 4-2-3-1 at a later date. Well, I just need to check one thing. Okay, so right, I'm going to introduce Mike Smith here. I'm going to just put him on the screen here. And there's Mike, so welcome, Mike. And Mike, can you just start off by telling everybody your brief coaching background, where you coach, that kind of stuff?
Right. Well, I'm at Todd County Central High School this year. Was at a University Heights for the previous 8. I've been coaching for the Kentucky High School Athletic Association for 20 years. Started playing in DC when I was 10, and it's been a part of my life ever since. So I don't know what I'd do without soccer. I'll tell you that.
Okay. And let's get right into it, because you're the 4-3-3. You like to play with a 4-3-3 when you can. And we'll examine all parts of the 4-3-3, but can you start off with, well, I'm presuming you play with a flat back 4, so everything's built from a flat back 4. But there are different ways that you can organize your midfield 3. You triangle with different points. You can organize them flat. How do you organize that midfield 3?
Well, and in the high school game specifically, I'm getting different players every year. I've never coached at a school where I had enough players to move a age group up, and I find the 4-3-3 using 3 midfielders between each gap in the flat back 4 just simplifies so much. And so I actually hold them there. I don't want to call them 3 defensive midfielders, but staying in those gaps and keeping that group just together in the center of the field has worked well for me. It's real simple for the young players, new players, old players. There's some creativity there. The center mid obviously is going to push up when we're attacking and be like the box to box person. And then the left and the right mids, they shift laterally a little bit. But basically, I'm keeping a line of 3, maybe a triangle pointed forward with the center mid when they're attacking.
Oh, that's interesting. So you have basically each one of those fills the gap in front of the back 4.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then but the center one is the one who's got, I guess, more freedom to move up and down.
Correct. And usually to start off, I'm wanting a service to come in from a wing, and I'm using one of my 3 forwards to do that. So then the other 2 have a near post run, far post run, and I use that center midfielder at the top of the box, and that usually does real well. Again, to start fundamentally, and when you drop that back, you've got 7 back, and that works defensively as well. I know it's kind of weird. I play an attacking formation with a defensive mindset.
Well, okay, that's interesting. What about your front 3 then? Do they play flat across the 3? Do they play in a triangle? How do they play?
Okay, now so usually I'm gonna spread them wide. So one on the left, one on the right. The central attacking striker stays in the center. That's my playmaker. So where a lot of times that would be the center mid, I use that center forward as the playmaker and give them the freedom to move. But those 2, the left and the right, I'll tuck I'll tuck them back. I I actually run a 4-3-2-1 quite a bit using those two strikers.
So the two wide ones.
Uh-huh.
Explain that bit again. You bring them back and inside,
Correct. When we lose the ball,
right?
I've got 4, then I've got 3 in the gaps, and then I
Yeah.
bring those 2 down in the 2 gaps between
Oh,
the
okay.
3 mids. It's like a Christmas tree, is what I
Yeah.
tell them.
Yeah.
And then I find, because I'm counterattacking. So I find when we drop that back, our opponents have to pick a side to go to. And when we win the ball, I found that I give those 2 forwards the opportunity and encourage them to actually switch sides and make the diagonal. And when we turn the ball, when we get the ball, whether that's my outside back or a midfielder, and those 2 forwards who have been back in the midfielder make diagonal runs to the opposite corners, it usually ends up opening up the center forward, my playmaker.
Okay.
So I've had great success with
So so when you're attacking, they're wide. When you're defending, they drop in.
exactly right.
Okay. Well, what about if you are getting attacked down the flanks? Obviously they have to move out then?
Absolutely. And most of the time I'm shifting the whole set over. So we're covering the middle, half space, and then either the left or right wing. And if something gets across, I'm using an outside back to go ahead and come up and pressure that until we can get organized again. And that forces the team to actually have to go through everybody. And I'm hoping they're not able to do that easily. So I'm hoping we're turning the ball over right there centrally where my strength is.
Right. Okay. Well, just a second, because I think Alex might have joined us.
All
Alex,
right.
can you hear me? Oh, and I can hear you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add Alex in now. And Alex,
there we go.
Okay, so there we go. So Alex, basically what we've done so far, you haven't missed anything. Mike's just taken his turn, just kind of explained a bit about his coaching background, where he coaches, but then he's gone in to detail how he lines up his 4-3-3. So can you just tell everybody a little bit about your coaching, and then we'll go into your 4-2-3-1.
Started off with the English FA, did that obviously back home. From there came over, got a waiver into the B license from back then Bobby Howe. Did the B license, went on to do the A National Premier. I've done the LMA League Managers Association badge, goalkeeping badges. So I've really kind of gone into the theory part of the game, because I think that's where you kind of learn the X's and the O's. So I've really studied the theory more so than the practical as I've got more into coaching.
Okay. All right. And where do you coach now?
Coaching at Sporting Omaha.
Okay. And are they affiliated with Sporting Kansas City? Are they one of the academies?
Yes, it's part of the big affiliation. I think we're at 15 clubs now.
Okay, good. All right. Well, let's get into the 4-2-3-1 then. So, can you explain to everyone how you line up with 4-2-3-1? I'm presuming you start from a flat back 4.
Not necessarily a flat back 4, more like a
all right. Well, you start off with the back 4 and explain that to us.
So the number 2 and the number 3 are slightly higher than the 2 centre backs. Reason being, we want the goalkeepers to play out into them advanced channels. So if you think of it as a horseshoe, back 4, the 4 and the 5 very much kind of stay home, and we allow the 2 and the 3 to get forward.
Okay, all right. So that's interesting right away. Now, explain how you line up the 2-3-1 parts, and
right.
Because
obviously the 2. Yeah, the 2 we do the number 6 on the left hand side, the number 8 on the right side. So basically, it's like a double 6, and then in front with the 3 midfield, the 10 in the middle, the 7 on the right, the 11 on the left hand side. That gives us obviously it's a 2 and a 3, but in defending situations, it gives us a bank of 5. So when we're off the ball, it allows us to defend in big numbers.
So let's just let me just ask a question about the two people. They're
Yep.
pretty much holding midfielders in the central part in front of the centre defenders.
Yeah, and then
Now,
whatever side the ball is on, Mike, will allow the opposite side to attack. So if the ball goes down the left flank, the right side of the two, the number 8, will join the attack, and the left-sided 6 will hold.
okay, all right. Well, yeah, that's a similar thing than I used to teach my kids. You know, opposite side. I always want up there to get on the end of crosses.
Yeah.
So okay, so that's those two. Now, how would you line up the midfield 3? Are they in a diamond? Are they straight across the field? How is that?
No, they're very much so. If you imagine the two that are holding, the 6 and 8, the number 10 sits in the middle. That creates the diamond off of there. And then the 7 and 11 create the width. Obviously, if we go through the 2 and the 3, then the 7 and 11 can go more internal, allowing that 2 and 3 to get over the halfway line.
I'm lost with these numbers, Alex. Just explain that again, because if I'm lost, I'm sure everybody else.
So the midfield 3, the central midfield player, the number 10, is playing on a point in front of them 2 holding mids.
Right.
The outside left and the outside right.
Yeah.
If the fullbacks are carrying the ball, they will go internal to allow more of a flank play.
All right. So they basically move out of the way for the fullback to get up the flank.
Correct. And that allows us that internal pass on the combination.
Okay. All right. And then any special things for you lone forward?
Obviously in possession, mostly with their back to the goal. When we play the ball in, we have 3 players underneath that can join the attack. The issues that we see, or the issues that we run into, is teams that play with the back 4, and then they stretch that single target player out of position. That's where we train that player to be a little more predictable with their runs, so that we can isolate that player. But in possession, most of the time, back to the goal, laying the ball off, so they have 3 runners coming in underneath.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's stick with you, Alex. We'll move on to you next, Mike. But let's talk about the strengths, because you've obviously played different formations. You've been coaching a long time, Alex. So tell me what you think are the strong points, the strengths of the 4-2-3-1.
Numerically, I think the balance. Obviously, you've got 4, so you've got your bank of 4 defenders in front of the goalkeeper. The 2 are basically a double security. In the old days when we used to talk about the security player, you have 2 of them playing from sideline to sideline, covering each other's spacing. The 3, depending on in possession, there's 3 late runs into the box underneath the number 9, the striker. Overall strengths, obviously, possession, keeping the ball, making sure that we move the ball around. And I think, obviously, when you think of restarts from the goalkeeper, the 2 fullbacks being nice and wide, and then having the lineal pass, the pass right down the sideline that bypasses the 2 straight into that 7, the wide right midfield, or the 11, the left midfield. So we can literally play somewhat of a possession game, but revert very quickly into a direct game.
Okay, what about defensively? Just go over that. I know you mentioned that, but just go over defensively what you see as the strong points of that. I know you've got back 4 and then 5, so you've got numbers back behind big time. Yeah.
So obviously in midfield, we then go into, it's like a block of 5. If they have the ball and they're going against one of our fullbacks, the left-sided holding player, which would be the number 6, would then slot in beside the left defender and what we used to call the inside left centre back. So that player would then create an additional line, no different if the ball went down the left side, their left. Our right back, our number 2, would go over, and the number 8 would recover on the inside of that number 2. Obviously, you're talking about a lot of communication, a lot of recovery runs when we don't have the ball, but then it creates that 5 midfield almost into a block of 5 defenders, and at sometimes 6 defenders.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm just going to head back over to Mike now, and we'll, Mike, if you can. Hang on a second, I've lost you. No, there you go.
Back.
So, Mike, if let's talk about the 4-3-3 now. You've given us a rundown. Tell us what you think are the strengths of the 4-3-3, like Alex has just done with his.
Right, and much like he said, I like the balance. I would consider it very balanced with the 4-3 and the 3. Very simple. He mentioned the communication needs to make what he's doing working with the 5-man midfield, which I like. But I found the simplicity of the formation of running 3 midfielders. It helps that communication. Everybody knows what they're doing. There's nobody to look to say, well, you should have done that. He should have done this. So I think the biggest strength is the simplicity. And then again, if you're dropping 7 and they're attacking 6, whatever way they organize those 6, you've got an extra player, and then you've got 3 waiting for their 4. And the only way they can really get those numbers is to come on and bring one of those up. Now all my playmakers are one-on-one, and if I've got the right group, I'm going to take those chances very directly. I actually like to play direct first. Then if the attack doesn't work, build the possession for a second and third attack.
Okay.
Right.
So you're looking to attack quickly, and if that doesn't work, then okay, let's regroup and pass the ball around and create another chance.
Exactly right. And I think so the strength of the 4-3-3, it gives you the balance, it gives you the numbers, all the spaces are controlled. It's real simple. You can play it direct. You can possess out of it, of course, but I just like the balance, the simplicity, all the players understand it. And as soon as you start spreading it out, if you've got those creative players and those good players, plenty of room for them to improvise and be creative and do what they do.
Okay. All right. Well, let's flip the coin now and let's look at, because I know you've probably played other formations as well in your time. What about the weaknesses? What do you think are the weaknesses of the 4-3-3?
Well, initially, and again, a 5-man midfield that can move up quick and possess on the move. As soon as you get a group that can 2-touch, 1-touch on the move, that's hard before you can recover. And if they can jump 5 into a midfield where you've only got 3, you're looking at, unless your backs are real disciplined, they're going to jump up in there, and now you've got a huge gap. And like you said, I do that too. I use my outside back on the opposite side to just roll up in there. And so there's some recovery issues against a good experienced team that's quick with the ball on the ground. There is a disadvantage numerically there.
Okay. What, any disadvantages, any weaknesses when you're in possession, when you've got the ball that you think?
Well, again, turnovers. I don't think with a 3-man mid you can turn the ball over in the midfield and really recover without your goalie being the one that gets the ball. So I think you don't have as many recovery options. So you have to play more disciplined in direct, in my opinion. And that's a weakness. You have to have the right players. They have to be disciplined, and they have to make the plan work. Where I want my creative players to be my strikers again, doing that in the box, the opponent's box. So then if you lose the ball there, you've got the time and space to recover.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk with Alex, and let's see, Alex, if you can. Let's see. Okay, there we go, Alex. So, what about the weaknesses then that you see with the 4-2-3-1?
Especially playing against our formation, like Mike said, overwhelming numbers in midfield. We have an absolute advantage. 5 against 3. It allows us for our combinations. It allows us to basically break them down as individuals, especially from sideline to sideline. I think that's the key there is if we're caught on a sideline and we come internally backwards, we can now advance, break the line forward, and then go out to the opposite sideline. And we can do that quite easily against the midfield 3. Obviously, with the lone striker against that back 4, the key there is for that lone striker to occupy 1 or 2 of the centre backs and then allow the 3 running players to isolate either an individual fullback or the other lone centre back.
So let me just ask this question: if you're playing a team, let's say that you're equal to, that it's a kind of 50-50 game. What about what happens if you're playing a team that is stronger? Either they're better skill, better players, overall a team that you'd struggle against. How
Right.
how does a 4-2-3-1 match up with that?
Obviously, defensively, it maybe helps secure that because you've got players that are getting back. You've got that two blocks, the back four, a block, and then the five. If they do go as a 2 and a 3, a 5. The one thing that obviously we've run into, especially with the high level teams, is when they play a direct ball and they have a wide player in behind either one of our two holding mids. So that's where they eliminate. They read the cues. They see it's like a block of 5, and then they play the long ball that eliminates the front 3. And that probably is the weak area, especially with that lone striker. That lone striker can very rarely prevent that ball being played.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, let's take a look now at different formations, Alex. So, let's say you're playing a 3-5-2. How does a 4-2-3-1 match up with that? How does it exploit that?
Well, obviously, it's a 5 and a 5 in midfield, so that really becomes a central field. It's a battle. So I think of all the formations, the 3-5-2 probably is the closest one, and it becomes a midfield game. With their 3 at the back in our possession, it allows us, if we do break, we're going to have numbers up, especially if we play, that penetrating ball and every player is facing the goal. On the reverse side, defensively, with their 2 strikers, it still allows us to play out the back. The key there is, can we create spaces in a 5v5 in that middle part of the field?
Okay. Well, let me just ask Mike that same question. Hey, Mike. So how would let's look at the 4-3-3 matching up now with different formations. How do you think that matches up with a 3-5-2?
I like it better because by formation, my 3 forwards are going to be 1-on-1, and they're going to have to deal with that. Again, same issues with the difference in the numbers at midfield. But like Alex said, a direct play will beat that. So you have to use your backs, and you have to use that direct play to overcome that numerical disadvantage if you want to maintain your 3 up. Now, of course, you can drop in, and I do that a lot. I actually, when we're stuck in our end, and remember, I think defense is where you have to start, and so I've got a defensive shape. It's the 4-3-2-1. You step up and in transition, you're looking a lot like a 4-3-3, but then actually when we're up in the end, it's looking more like a 3-4-3, and you can do that just by moving 1 or 2 players. So again, I think that's the strength and how you counteract a lot of those different formations you're going to see. And we see the 3-5-2, 4-3-2, 4-2-3-1, 4-4-2. Of course, there's still people holding on to that and doing a lot of that. So,
well,
I don't know if that answers the question.
The 4-4-2 that's my formation.
Okay.
I'm not smart enough to change. It's the only one I know. But anyway, but let's talk about the 4-4-2. So when you're coming up with somebody playing 4-4-2, how does the 4-3-3 match up with that?
Well, actually, so I'm not worried about the 2 forwards with 4 back. I'm actually free then to step my back up because I'm not worried about 2 forwards when I've still got 3 back. I like to have 1 more than they have up. So that the issues are not as in midfield are not as glaring. I would actually want to possess the ball a little more. I think for some reason with that midfield 3 against the 4, because usually in the 4-4-2, one of them's going to be wide. One of them's going to be out there. So really, if you're shifting right, you're playing a 3-on-3 there. in the midfield. So it's not as bad as if somebody's playing a 5-man midfield. And then of course you've got 3 on their 4. Again, you're free to get that back. I really let my outside back go. If we're playing a 4-4-2, and as soon as my top 3 get it, I'm running that outside back all the way up, and then we're 4v4 there.
Okay. All right. Well, let's check on Alex with the 4-4-2. So, how are you going to beat my 4-4-2, Alex?
Mikey, if you don't mind, I know what someone's asking about, if they could see the shapes. I don't know whether you can pick that up cleanly, if I've got to scoot back, but that's basically, if you can see that, the shape. And then the double lines are the combinations that we like to go outside the opposing team. And then the single lines, and then in the middle, you can see almost like the number 5 on a dice. There's 2 number 5s on a dice. So that's basically the setup. Going back to the 4-4-2, Mike, back in the day when we both started, that's all we knew. And it's amazing that there was quite a push to get away from the 4-4-2 and start creating these numerical differences. Up until coaching, probably about up to 3 years ago, I always played the 4-4-2. Always. Even though, the national team on the female side was a 4-3-3, the 4-4-2, I thought gave, again, the numerical balance. So that's a very strong formation, but we all know it's the players within that make it happen. You can go up against any formation and be either broken down or be successful just by your players.
Yeah. Now, bear in mind, okay, I'm just going to defend my 4-4-2 a little bit here. Bear in mind, didn't Leicester win the English Premier League, and they played mostly a 4-4-2, didn't they? So it's not like it doesn't work. I think if it works well and you've got the right players and coach well, it's a good formation. It's difficult to.
Mike, most World Cups in history were won with a 4-4-2. Most European Championships in history were won with a 4-4-2. So it's undoubtedly one of the, it could be, and it's the player personnel that you've got to figure out. Okay, well, let's just do one last formation. What about the 3-4-3? How do you like to match up against the 3-4-3? Again, 3-4-3, attacking from their attacking standpoint, it occupies an additional defender. So we do have to maybe go man-to-man. The 3 in midfield, that gives us obviously the numerical advantage because we've got the 5. The 3 at the back, it opens it up. If we were to play, are you asking if we would play a 3-4-3, Mike? Or just no, if you're playing against a 3-4-3, how does it match up, and what can you exploit in that 3-4-3? Yeah, I think obviously when we go against the 4 midfield, we would then release an additional runner. So if it was the ball was on our right side, we've got our 3 high mids already. That opposite side, no different than Mike was saying, the blind run, what we call the disconnected attacker, that player would make a run and open up the opposite flank. The obviously the 4 backs can still play out the back with the goalkeeper against the 3, although it is a little tight. But once we break that line of their front 3 and we get the ball into the midfield of our 5, we can play around that 3, or hopefully play around that 3. Okay, Alex, do me a favor. Yep. Hang on a second here. Can you get that chart? I'm going to just give you the full screen. Somebody made a good point there. They mentioned if I can get out of the way, I'm just going to hide me. So there you go, Mike. So if you look at the goalkeeper, the 2 and the 3 out wide, 4-5. But then look at the almost like the number 5 on the dice between the 3, 5, 6, 11, and 10, and then the 5, 4, 8, 10, and 7. That really leaves the number 2, the right-sided midfield player, as the free player, and that player's combinations. You're looking at 2, 8, 7. On the reverse side, 3, 6, 11. The 2 lines are the lines that we like to play out through. The single lines are our passing combinations. Does that make sense, Mike?
against the 3-4-3, Mike, with the 4-3-3?
I missed the first part of that, Mike. I just had a gray screen. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, just looking at what if you were matched up against a team playing the 3-4-3, how would you take advantage of that? How would you exploit that?
Well, again, right off the bat, they got 3 backs on my 3 forwards, and those are my best players. So that's going to be trouble. If they pushed in and kept their center 4 tight, then that would cause us some trouble. But if they spread them out, I like the 3-4-3 because it's 3 diamonds across the field, and it's real balanced, and everybody knows their role. So I do that. It's hard to deal with, again, if you've got a team that can move the ball quickly on the ground. So I'm going to try to high pressure with my block of 3, not give those gaps up. And again, I've got to worry about if I step an extra one of my guys into the midfield to help get those numbers. Now I'm defending one-on-one, and I don't like to do that. So it's probably that's the formation I like to play against the least, actually.
Okay. I'll have to remember that if I come up against your team.
Right.
I'll have to change from my 4-4-2. Okay.
Well, yeah, and let me say, a lot of times if I'm just dropping one of my strikers back, I'm in a 4-4-2, so I'm not hating on it. I just like to keep that extra guy high.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about tactics now then. So you're playing a game. You're in the last 10, 15 minutes. You're up by a goal. It's a pretty even game, or the team that you're playing may be a little bit stronger than you. What tactical changes do you make from your 4-3-3 to hold that lead and make sure that you don't give it up?
Yeah, and that's what I've made my career on here in Kentucky. I'm one of only 2 coaches in my district and one of only 3 in this region that's ever won a state tournament game against a team that was much better. They should have had us down 4-0 in the first 5 minutes of the game. We managed to counterattack, get one up on an own goal. They started pushing hard. I'm going right to that 4-3-2-1, and I'm just bunkering in, keeping all the gaps, and basically, I don't know what the soccer purist would say, but if there's 5 minutes left and I'm up a goal, I'm sending it up and letting that forward work, and just hoping that they're bringing so many up that he's got the time and space to go ahead and get that extra insurance goal. But I'm setting us in our own half.
So from a player movement point of view, though, you move your 2 wide forwards, and they move into the center as midfield. Correct. So now you've got a bank of 5 in midfield, and you just keep getting the ball out to your forward and hoping he can, keep them occupied for a little bit. And
yeah. And it's actually, it's a 4-5-1. If that helps people call it that, that's what I'm going to. And again, 1 or 2 players, you're moving, and you can change a whole bunch about what you're doing. And that's, again, what I like about the 4-3-3.
Okay, well, let's see what Alex does with a 4-2-3-1.
Goal up, Mike, or goal down?
Well, you're a goal up, Alex, but you're playing against a good team that's causing you problems. How do you move your players around? How do you adjust that formation? You've got 5-10 minutes in the game.
I think obviously the simple one is then to advance the 2 holding midfield higher and then bring the 3 back. So then it becomes a 4-3-2-1, obviously known as the Christmas tree. That little flip of the 3 going behind that 2 gives you a much wider defensive line. The key then, Mike, is the 2 players that have moved forward. It doesn't have to be the 6 and the 8, any combination. They now become part of the hunt with the number 9 to try and win the ball back. We've got to deny the long ball. Let
me just I just want to clear this up. So
yeah,
to start with, you've got your 4, you've got your back 4, and then you've got 2 in front of them.
Yep.
Now, you just bring one of the 3 in front of them back to create a 3 and then a 2?
Correct. Okay. Correct.
All right. I think the way it sounded, I thought those 3 players actually flipped back behind the 2 players and the 2 players moved forward.
No, and it could be just one player that makes the move, but then the numerical change. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, it's the same as what Mike is doing with the 4-3-3.
Very much.
That Christmas tree formula. Okay, well,
Yeah.
let's look at it the other way now. So now you've got your 4-2-3-1. You've given up a stupid goal. You're down, and yet you're better than that team, and you're attacking more, and they're getting on the defensive. So how do you change that formation now to be a more attacking formation to try and get that goal?
We would definitely move the number 10 up against the number 9. That would now create a 4-2-2 almost. If you think of it, you've got your back 4, you've still got them 2 holding mids, but that 10 would go up and join the number 9. The 7-11 would come in, and you'd create almost a massive horseshoe in that midfield. So the 10 would advance. Now you've got that big kind of horseshoe in the midfield to support that.
So where would you get your wide play from? Would your fullbacks be pushing up to create the wide play?
Yep, and that would advance the 7 and 11 as well. So the higher they are, the 7 and 11 would get higher. But now the 9 has the combination player, the 10 now to work off of.
So you've got a back 4
Yep,
with your fullbacks pushing up,
yep,
and then you've got your 2 holding midfielders, 2 attacking midfielders, and 2 forwards. So it's like a 4-2-2-2.
yeah. But it's, again, Mike, it's almost from sideline to sideline, because at that point you're going to want to isolate the fullbacks. We would
Right.
go after the fullbacks as much as we would go centrally to the 9 and the 10.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see how Mike would do that. So, Mike, so now you're up, down by a goal. You've given up a goal here to a team that you should be beating. And how do you now create more offense and be more attacking minded to try and get that goal back?
Right, and I couldn't hear that last segment. I couldn't hear Alex, so I don't want to repeat
Oh,
everything
okay.
he said, but I feel like it's going to be similar. So I'm going to use that outside back, and I want to get the ball directly upfield, right around the half line. And if I use one of my forwards, my strikers, that's fine. What I'm going to tell my team is, rather than lose the ball trying to do something fancy or make one more pass, right around the half line, definitely within 30 yards, I want a cross coming. And if I can use my outside back on the ball side, as soon as it looks like they're free to make that cross, I'm sending my outside back on the weak side right up in the mix. So hopefully now I've got all 3 of my strikers and that outside back coming in on the weak side with a good service coming in. And then the other 3, I'm not breaking up that block of my 3 midfielders. They're the ones then, out of the chaos that service creates, if the ball comes back to them, then they're free to do something there creatively. Hopefully just take a shot and get that back.
Okay. All right. Let's just throw everything wide open now. Let's just ask a wide open question. Any other things that we haven't mentioned yet on the 4-3-3, good or bad, or that you like, or you do different, anything at all, just in case I've missed them?
Well, I like the balance. It takes disciplined players to only run a 3-man mid. Sometimes you just can't get away with that. And again, I go to a 4-4-2, but that's the most important thing for me. And I think Alex said that you've got to have the players to make this stuff work. And you've got to be aware of that as a coach. You can't be stuck on, yeah, this is the best formation, this is going to work every time, this is all I'm doing. So you have to be flexible. But in general, I don't know that it has any real glaring weakness, and that's why I like it. Now, teams can exploit it and create a weakness, but on paper, when you look at it, and that's one of the things when I look at a 4-2-3-1, well, I'm seeing that gap of 2 right there. And for me, that's an issue. When I'm looking at a 3-4-3, I see only 3 people on the back line. That's an issue for me. I don't personally see it, being a fan of the 4-3-3. I don't see it in that.
Right.
That makes sense.
Okay. All right. Well, Alex, I'm just going to come over to you in a second. I noticed somebody on the Facebook has posted, when was the last time anybody won anything with a 4-4-2 there? I know it's an old formation. But like I said, I think Leicester won the English Premier League just 3 years ago, when I think they played mostly a 4-4-2. And somebody actually did reply that Inter Milan, I think, played with a 4-4-2, and they just beat Liverpool. in the Champions League. So it's not dead yet.
It's not. It's not.
Anyway, let me go to Alex. And so, Alex, we were talking about just any kind of issues or good, bad things, just an overall thing of the 4-2-3-1 that we haven't covered yet. Anything that you got there?
I would say the vulnerability of the three that tend to push on too much, Mike. No different than Mike just said about, looking at the two and trying to isolate them. If the three players in front of the two advance too much and too often, that two players that are holding have got too much ground to cover. And
like
that's where you...
Then.
Pardon?
Like a 4-2-4.
Yes. So then what happens is that disconnection now becomes for the opposition areas that they can play into. That's the one thing that we've really tried to teach our players, is to make sure they're connected, because when you think sideline to sideline, box to box, that's the vulnerability, is that group of three getting too high on too many occasions.
Okay. All right. Hey, I just want to mention for all the listeners, if you've got a question, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but if you've got a question for Alex or Mike on the 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3, put it down there. We might be able to get to that in the next few minutes, because we're almost at the end, actually. So sorry, I should have mentioned that earlier. But the next question I want to ask is, Alex, so from coaching the 4-4-2, you know how to coach that to your players. Now you've changed 4-2-3-1. Is there any issues, or let me rephrase that. What are the issues of teaching that to the kids? Is it harder, easier, or how do you do that? Is there methods? How does that go?
Because we were traditionally a 4-4-2 club, and then we started to obviously give a little more freedom with coaches making their own formations. The 4-2-3-1 is a very complex formation. It really is. Not only the movement, the amount of understanding, the amount of positional angles that they've got to create in and out of possession. So the 4-4-2, whether it's a 2 blocks of 4, a diamond midfield, a 4-1-3, you can kind of really tweak that. With the 4-2-3-1, it's almost got to be precision every time. And that's hard for young players, especially if they've been given a prior role and now they're given a responsibility outside of what they were usually doing. That's where players really look at you and think, right, I need help here.
Okay, now I know you did the 4-4-2 before, and I'm sure you've done 4-3-3 a little bit in your time as well. So is there a style of play that works better or doesn't work better with any of these formations? Is possession based easier with this than the 4-4-2 or that kind of stuff?
Well, I think the 4-4-2, you're always looking at the direct ball and the counter attack. With the 4-2-3-1, you're looking more of a possessional build up, because the lone striker is on their own. So you're looking at that player almost being a setting player, always played into it. That player sets the ball back. So now you've got that possession around the 18-yard line. With a 4-4-2, it really does open up that direct down the flanks, right back to the left side of midfield, left back to the right side of midfield. And then you've obviously got the forwards where they can play off of each other. So again, we try to mix it up, Mike. We're not going to be possession only. We're going to play direct. We're going to sit in when we have to. We're going to, obviously hunt for the ball, penetrate as much as we can. But that, again, all goes back down to the players. The players have got to understand the transitional part of the game.
Okay. Hey, somebody just posted a question here, so I'll put it on the screen. How do you press high with a 4-2-3-1? How do you do that?
Obviously, the key is the number 9 has got to make sure that they make the play predictable, i.e. their goalkeeper's got the ball. If that goalkeeper is going to go to their right back, and number 9 now has got to come across almost not level, almost in a curve run, forcing that number 2 to go towards the sideline and then that allows that number 11 to start squeezing. That's the combination, Mike, that's so important, because that lone striker is always going to be pulled from sideline to sideline. But that making play predictable then brings the 7 and 11 in to use that sideline to try and win the ball back.
Okay, well, let me just get back over to Mike. So, Mike, let's just start off with, well, actually, let's finish this question off. So how would you press high with a 4-3-3?
Well, and it's the same thing. And I'm reading it. It says if you tuck the two wides in, that's a fundamental of it. If I'm pressing that whole formation high up the middle, which I do, they're gonna, as long as you're strong in the middle, basically what you're saying is pick a side. So when they pick a side to play the ball on and try to come up, I call it pinning them to the line. That's when you want that shift, and I'm going to bring the pressure down on them from my top, from my forwards, make sure that the backs are coming up, and hopefully try to play them through the middle, again, where my three midfielders that are good at that are waiting to win the ball back. So it makes a perfect spear point. You know, if you can call it a Christmas tree defensively, but I actually, when the guys advance that, I call it the spear to kind of cut them right down the middle. It cuts their numbers in half. You know, it makes them predictable because they've got to pick a side. And then when you pin them to the line, they got to come back through the strength of your formation. So I think it's wonderful to do that with.
Okay. What about, I asked Alex that question about teaching kids. Do you find the 4-3-3 is like the easiest one to teach? Is it simple? Is it complicated?
Correct. And see, I teach the spacing aspects of it first. Again, defense, it's a lot of just being in the right place and being ready to fight when they bring the fight to you. So I feel like with those defined gaps, the kids automatically know where to be. And I start from there and build forward. And that's the simplicity I'm talking about. A lot of kids, you know, they get lost in the midfield. And if there's 4 guys there and they're looking around, 5 guys, you know, it just creates less confusion to build from. You don't want to overwhelm them with everything. I've never had a problem taking anyone from a 4-4-2, and mostly that's where they come from around here, a 4-4-2 background, and just because it's the difference in one player, dropping one player back, stepping one player up. So it's not a problem. Okay.
Hey, one of the Facebook questions here: what characteristics do you look for in the middle three? You know, your midfield three.
Absolutely. Of course, they got to be the most active and mobile. You know, I run the center box to box. I don't mind if the other two do that as well. I want a little more discipline. I want them to know when one's up, 2 are basically holding mids, much like in the 4-2-3-1. They've got to be able to win the ball, make a decision quickly. I really want them hitting somebody wide, whether it's the outside back or one of the forwards slipping out. So I want them to be able to win the ball and then distribute that really, really quickly. I believe you have to play pretty. You can possess the ball, but you have to do it quickly and you have to do it directly. Now, I don't mean I'm just banging it all over the place. I want it going to feet in the right space, but I think you have to play that way with 3 people in the middle, and those players have to have those qualities to achieve that.
Okay. All right. Well, guys, I think that is pretty much the end of the discussion. I think we've done a great job. I'm real pleased. I think we've covered a lot of ground for the viewers and the listeners, so I'm real pleased about that. I thank you for both coming. I just want to let everybody know that we're going to be doing more of these. We're going to probably do them Tuesday, Friday. We've got one coming up. Alex, you may want to get in on this one with, although Arsenal are not very good anymore, are they, Alex? We've got one coming up with Man City against Liverpool. So we've got Barry Walmsley.
Yeah,
he's gonna give Man City's viewpoint on why they're the best and why Guardiola's the best, and then we're gonna have somebody who's gonna give the opinion on why Liverpool is the best and why Klopp is the best, and they're gonna go at it. And I thought that'd be kind of interesting because they've got 2 different philosophies as well. And 2 big name coaches and big name clubs. So that's one we've got scheduled for next week. So thank you guys for doing this, and thanks
Thank you.
everybody for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Take care.
All right. Thank you.
All right, I think.